So, as mentioned today on TechMuze, what I want to talk about with you is one of my absolute favorite forms of content for, well, in general, but definitely for us as musicians and artists. If you followed TechMuze for a while, or if you've checked out the Artist Promotion Blueprint, you're going to know, you'll be aware that one of the biggest parts in this philosophy of promoting ourselves online and off is content production. So oftentimes it's referred to as content marketing. Just in the general internet marketing landscape, you'll hear that phrase bandied about from time to time. But the reason why I think it's so powerful is because what we're really trying to do, and you've probably heard me say this a number of times in the past, what we're really trying to do is to create connections with as many people as possible, and then to nurture those connections so that we are slowly developing a loyal base of fans surrounding what it is that we do. And in our case, most of the time we're discussing music, because that's the people I like to speak to. So one of the ways in which we can create connections is, well, if you think about it, in order for somebody to connect with you, there has to be something for them to connect with. So we do our social media, we do our posts on Twitter and Facebook, etc. And those become little bits, little tiny pieces of content that are out there available for people to connect with. And oftentimes, hopefully, they do. And they'll drop a like or leave a comment or whatnot. And then that can be the beginning of another connection. The other thing that I like to talk about a lot is producing and distributing content in the form of the 4 major types of content that are available to use online. And those are audio, of course, especially as musicians, that's very important. Video, images, and text. Those are the only 4 types of content that you can distribute online. So it brings me back to live streaming. One of the reasons, but let me back up a little bit, actually. The first time I sort of stumbled upon live streaming in the context of musicianship was a good buddy of mine who you may know from the Home Studio Corner blog by the name of Joe Gilder. He does very similar work to what I do with the TechMuze Academy. He's a very smart guy, and he has a lot of great high-quality educational products. He is also a musician as well. And he was just releasing, or just about to release, his latest album, and he decided, as sort of as part of his pre-release strategy, that he would do a live streamed concert. Now, he used a service called Concert Window, which I believe is concertwindow.com, if I'm not mistaken. I'll find that link and pop it in the chat there. And he sent an email out to his email subscribers, of which I am one. And I thought, okay, well, 2 things intrigue me. 1, I'm curious to hear what Joe's working on creatively these days, so I want to hear his music. And 2, I was very curious to hear how he was going to see how he was going to use this technology, and to see what sort of results that it had. So I subscribed and tuned in when he went live. Now, this is the thing that I found interesting. First of all, he did a gig. Now, if you're a gigging musician, as I am, as I know you are, Carol, in the chat there, because we gig together, that, there's a lot of work involved in pulling off a gig in terms of setup and gear lugging and the amount of time, especially if you're playing a standard bar gig. Oftentimes the typical situation is you're playing from 9 to 1 or 10 to 2 in the morning, about 4 hours, 4 sets with little breaks in between. And then at the end of the night, you tear down your gear, you pack it all back in the car, and you drive home, and maybe you even unload the gear that night too, if you're crazy like that. And oftentimes, you're making a couple $100 here, a couple $100 there. It's definitely a great way to supplement the income, and it is definitely a viable revenue stream. But then when I watched what Joe did on Concert Window, I was extremely intrigued. So I tuned in. And the way Concert Window works, it's a very simple setup. You see the video screen, and obviously you hear the audio. And then there are opportunities on the screen for your audience to tip you if they enjoy what you're doing. So they can tip you $1 or $1 million, depending on how they feel at the time and how much you've impressed them, I suppose. So I would say that during Joe's performance, which he played for about 45 minutes, I might add, in his home. So there was no filling the car with gear and setting it up and tearing it down and all of that. He stayed in his home studio, set up a camera, couple of lights, a nice microphone, and he played acoustically. Could have been in his pajamas, this type of thing. So very casual, very easy to get set up. And I believe that over the course of the 45-minute set, he had probably about 150 people that had tuned in and out throughout the course of his performance. And at the end of his performance, you can kind of see as a viewer on the screen when people are tipping. It's sort of a social encouragement type thing, because if some people are tipping, it may encourage you to do the same, which I think is fantastic. And at the end of his performance, less than an hour, he had brought in about $800 in tips. Now, the way Concert Window works is there's no cost for anything for the audience or the broadcaster, but when you get tips, they do a 70-30 share. So you keep 70% of the tips, they keep the 30%, and that is how their business makes money. It's a pretty good idea. So in the end, I think he took home just south of $600 for playing 45 minutes in his basement, and not having to set up and tear down gear. And at that point, I was definitely intrigued in the whole live streaming concept in general. So I started exploring. Now, we have yet to experiment with Concert Window. That's something that's on our agenda to play around with and see what kind of results that we can get and what kind of fun we can have using that. But the two primary platforms that I'm finding to be extremely powerful, one, if you're watching this episode live, is Blab. This episode is being streamed live on blab.im, which is a fairly a newcomer on the live streaming scene. And the way Blab works is you can go live with video and audio, and you can also open up seats so that other people can join you on the broadcast, and you can have conversation, you can have Q&As, you can interview people and have other people come on and ask questions. That's kind of an interesting idea as well. And then there's also the chat role inside on the side of the screen where people can talk amongst themselves or can post questions that can then be addressed later on in the broadcast. So Blab is definitely a great platform for doing things collaboratively with your audience, with your fans. And then the other streaming service that I use a lot is Periscope. And Periscope and Blab both are connected intimately with Twitter. And so if you are already growing a bit of a following, an audience on Twitter, this is a great way to sort of strengthen that community and to get people to be more involved personally with you. Now, if we talk a little bit about the difference between Periscope and Blab, because with Periscope, it is a smartphone or tablet app, okay? And that makes it super convenient. Most of us these days have a smartphone in our pocket or a purse, and it becomes possible now for you to, at the drop of a hat, if something interesting is going on or an interesting idea has just struck you, that you can just pull out your phone and go live on Periscope and talk to people or show people what's going on in your world. The thing I love about that is the intimacy and the authenticity of it, and a little bit of vulnerability there too, because there's no editing. It's completely live. People can see and hear what you're doing, and they can interact with you via texting on the screen. So they can text on the screen and you can speak back to answer their questions or to engage with your audience. So a couple of things I really enjoy about Periscope are the immediacy, the fact that I can pull it out of my pocket at any time and go live, and this authentic, vulnerable type of broadcast, because like I say, it's non-scripted. I suppose you could sit down and write a script and if you wanted to, but that kind of defeats the point of the whole live stream thing. I think that people are hungry for that authenticity these days. Back in the old business model of the music industry, you would find that there was this big separation between artist and fan, and it was kind of like this: the artist up here on the top of the mountaintop, the fan down below, admiring from below. And I think that's kind of burnt out. That's kind of died out. People don't want that, especially with the way the internet works nowadays, the kind of access and connections that can be made with folks instantly, globally. People are now really yearning for an honest, authentic connection with people. If you consider yourself, whoever it is that you're a fan of, I'm a big fan of, say, Tommy Emmanuel, Australian guitar player. He's an absolute monster. If you like fingerstyle guitar, look up Tommy Emmanuel. He's a crazy man. But if, for example, I sent a message out to Tommy Emmanuel on his Facebook page and he answered me back, that that direct connection without the whole music industry in between, artist up here, all the lowly minion fans down here, that is going to leave me with a far stronger sense of connection to this person who I'm already a fan of. And then on top of that, if Tommy decided to jump on Periscope and he's just in the middle of his regular day doing whatever he's doing, and he goes live and starts talking about whatever's on his mind and showing us what's going on in his world, that further solidifies this sense of authentic connection, which I believe is extremely valuable in this day and age, and I think necessary for us as DIY musicians to really place a great deal of our focus on. So I love Periscope for that. I love live streaming in general for that, but Periscope in particular, because with something like a Blab, let's shift over to that platform now that I'm currently broadcasting on. The thing I love about Blab, I'm seeing Durham Skywriter in the chat talking about Tommy. He's a monster. Yes, look up Tommy Emmanuel if you don't know who he is. The thing I love about Blab is that it's much more interactive than Periscope. With Periscope, as I mentioned, your viewers can type text onto the screen, and you can speak and answer them back. And so there is a degree of communication there. With Blab, however, we've got the chat role on the right-hand side of the screen, where even if I'm hosting the Blab, which in this case I am, and I'm doing my spiel as I am at the moment, and there's an audience watching, they can talk amongst themselves even in the chat, which is very cool. They can post links, and if I mention something and someone pulls up the link, they can share it in the chat, which is fantastic. And so you get some community dialogue happening. But you can also open up a seat and have people join you live with video and audio on the screen, which is a much more powerful way to connect with your audience. So again, back to my Tommy Emmanuel example, if Tommy was hosting a Blab and he had the seat open and I got to jump on and actually be live having a conversation with one of my idols, as far as music is concerned, can just think about how that would feel. And that's a powerful way to really strengthen the connection that you're endeavoring to create with your audience. Because again, if you follow TechMuze for a while, and if you are familiar at all with the artist promotion blueprint and my sort of philosophy on music marketing in the modern age, that creation of connection and rapport and the developing of that rapport is pretty much top shelf priority. That obviously, along with making great music and great content, I'm hoping and will assume from this point onward that if you're ready to start turning your music into a business, that hopefully you have good music, because that is beyond the scope of this conversation and the conversation at artistpromotionblueprint.com. So let's assume you have good music. Let's assume you already have a few people that like your music. So there is some external confirmation that your music is good, because that can be tricky as an artist. I've written things that I thought were great that turned out to be not so great, and I'm sure it'll happen again in the future, and vice versa, of course. Okay, so your job basically as a DIY musician who is trying to make a business out of your music is to create great content that includes music, that includes videos and everything else that you may publish, and B, figure out as many ways to connect with as many people as possible and in the most potent and powerful way possible. And again, this brings me back to why I love live streaming, because it just ups the engagement level so to the power of 10. When I see somebody leave a post on Facebook or on Twitter, that's great. That's content that I can consume. That's thoughts or whatever it is from the person who I've chosen to follow. That's fantastic. But that's a very surface level form of contact. If I meet them in a room and shake their hand, that's a very potent form of contact. That's a real connection. In fact, this has happened to me many times where I've heard a piece of music from a band that I like, and I'm thinking, yeah, these guys are really good. I'm kind of a fan already. And then maybe I go and see them live and they play equally good. And now, because I've seen them live, there's a deepening to my relationship with that artist. I like them a little more now. And if after the gig I go down to the bar and there's the singer having a pint at the bar, and I get to shake his hand and say, hey, you did a great job, and we talk for 5 minutes, then my relationship with that artist is strengthened even more so. And at that point, there's a good chance I'm going to be telling my friends about them and becoming a bit of an evangelist, because the rapport, the connection was not just created, but strengthened through a progressively more intimate level of communication. Okay. So obviously, as your audience grows, you'll have to use your own determination as to what's appropriate and what's not, as far as how much of yourself you want to share and how much access you want to provide. But in my personal opinion, the more, as much as you are comfortable with, do that. 100% of your comfort level is what you should be doing as often as you possibly can. Okay. So these are some of the reasons why I love live streaming, and these are some of the reasons why I love these two particular platforms, Blab and Periscope, and also why we're definitely going to be experimenting with live streaming performances as well, using services like Concert Window. So, stay tuned, and I'm sure we'll have some stuff to report about that fairly soon. If you're actually interested in checking out some of the musical projects and things that I work on, you should head over to Dezz and Carol.com. In fact, Carol, if you're still in the chat, you should post us a linky there so people can have a look. We just redesigned the website, and I think it looks pretty snazzy. So let me know what you think. That's Dezz with 2 Z's, DezzAndCarol.com. And so you can have a listen to some of the stuff that we're working on. Okay. So let me talk about one other reason why I love live streaming. And it has to do with something that's referred to as the Pareto principle, which you may have heard referred to as the 80-20 principle. It's the idea that in most cases, 20% of your efforts are actually what is yielding 80% of your results. And so the concept is to figure out what that 20% of your efforts are that's giving you the most bang for your buck, and to focus your energies on those things and stop wasting your energies on the 80% of the other things that you're doing that are not contributing to the bulk of your results. This is a concept that's been around for a little while, and is there's so many books on the subject and people talking about it. It's just one of those phenomena that just seems to always be the case, like the Fibonacci sequence or whatever. And if we look at streaming from the perspective of both the 80-20 principle and the main job of us as DIY musicians, which is obviously, apart from creating content, is creating connections, strong rapport with as many people as we can. This is where I get excited again about live streaming. You see, as I've already discussed, the authenticity level and the ability to connect is definitely more impactful with a live stream. When you can see and hear and interact in the moment with somebody, that's far better than replying to an email or responding to a tweet that may have happened an hour ago or whatnot. So we've upped the level of engagement. Okay, but the other thing that I find really interesting about live streaming is if you follow the artist promotion blueprint, you'll know that the blueprint is designed to build you a system that's going to maximize your reach, so that when you put a piece of content out there, that it gets spread far and wide and is optimized to encourage people to engage with you. Again, because that is the most important thing when building your fan base. Incidentally, by the way, I get asked a lot, well, what about selling my albums and selling my merch? Well, I've learned through experience and from experimenting that if you develop loyal fans, that sales happen all by themselves. You do not have to take a sales course and train to be a salesperson. You need to create strong, authentic connections with many, many people, and they will support you. That's just it's just a byproduct of having a loyal fan base. So don't worry about that. So in our efforts to be as prolific as possible, in our efforts to create something great and to make sure that it gets to every corner of the internet that we can possibly go to find people who will potentially resonate with our content and hopefully, engage with us. I use a lot of automation systems and scripts and whatnot, and everything centers around the website. So I create a website. In our case, it's dezzandcarol.com. The link is in the chat if you want to check it out. And we publish content, whether that's a blog post or a video or a piece of music or what have you. We publish that to the website, and then the Artist Promotion Blueprint designed system spreads that content far and wide and optimizes it to encourage people to both engage with us and to give us permission to contact them in the future. And we do this via our email newsletter. Okay. So these are ways in which we can automate this engagement or this syndication process. So syndication simply referring to that spreading and distribution of your content. Okay. So I talked at the beginning of this episode about the 4 types of content that you can use for this. You can use audio, you can use video, you can use images, and you can use text. There is nothing else until we get into holograms and stuff. There is nothing else that you can post on the internet. So when I do a live stream like this, for example, on Blab, it's recording right now. So as soon as I'm done this conversation and I end the broadcast, this will automatically, and I love that word, automatically. Automation is something that kind of gets me going. So this will automatically create and embed this video on my website, which is techmuseacademy.com. So a post will automatically be created and saved in draft, ready for me to publish at any point in time. So what I do from there is I will, you'll notice if you looked at this broadcast on the homepage of Blab, there was an image that I associated with this conversation. That image will automatically be the featured image on my blog post as well. So now I've got audio, video, and image, the 3 major forms of content, 3 of the 4, already done automatically as soon as I hit stop after this broadcast. Okay, so that's fantastic. And then from there, what I'll do is before I publish that post is I'll log in and I'll jot down a paragraph or 2 about my thoughts on the conversation or what the visitor is about to see and hear in the video, or any links or any relevant information that's going to be useful. And now I have, within the time it takes me to talk into the camera and the microphone, and then the time it takes me to write that paragraph or 2, I now have all 4 forms of content done with very little effort. Now, the other form of content, the other type of content, I suppose you could say, that I'm also getting is a live event. There are people in the room right now listening to me live as I'm having this conversation. A few people are chatting amongst themselves in the chat roll on the side of the screen. I have a live event as well as a video for the blog. The other thing I will do is I will strip the audio from this video and I'll put a little intro and outro on the top and the tail, and that goes to iTunes as a podcast episode. So now I'm in iTunes as a podcast. I'm on YouTube. I can put this video on YouTube very easily. I'm in that marketplace there, that in front of that audience. I've got a blog post that contains all the 4 forms of content. This all was derived from a live event, which some people attend live, and as your popularity grows, that number will grow as well. And then from there, the Artist Promotion Blueprint kicks in and syndicates that content to LinkedIn, Google+, Twitter, StumbleUpon, Plurk, Digo, Delicious, everywhere that I can think of that I've connected to my website via these content pipelines that you may have heard me speak about in the past. Okay, so if you think about all of that all of that content that's being produced, and all of those points that are of discovery that I've just created and spread all over the internet for people to potentially click on, be attracted to, and then perhaps want to engage further, all from this half-hour conversation that I had live on Blab. That's fantastic as far as I'm concerned. I'm exerting that 20% of effort to get that 80% result, that Pareto principle that I was speaking about earlier, which fascinates me. And I'm always looking for ways to improve upon that so that I have more time to spend doing other things, writing songs and creating music and recording and these types of things that I enjoy doing. Okay. So that is another reason why I love live streaming. I get a live event, I get a video for YouTube, I get a blog post out of the deal, I get a podcast episode for iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play, anywhere you want to place your podcast, and I get all of that from a half hour to maybe an hour worth of effort, which is fantastic. And then, of course, with the Artist Promotion Blueprint, you get the distribution, the syndication, and all of these other things that are designed to spread your content seeds out there and to pull people back into your engagement funnel, which is beyond the scope of today's conversation. But if you're curious about that, go to artistpromotionblueprint.com and check that out. In fact, I will pop a quick link in the chat right now if you want to have a look at that. And if you do, let me know what you think. I'm always curious about what people think of the stuff that I've put together, ways in which I can improve. That's always valuable to me. Okay. So now if we look at Periscope, with Periscope, you can use a service called Catch. And I'm going to pop a link to that in the show notes as well. In fact, I will pop a link to our Catch so you can check out some of the stuff that we've been doing. Thank you, Carol. There we go. So that's a link directly to our Catch. But if you sign in with your Twitter account, by the way, with Blab and Periscope, all you do is sign in with your Twitter account. That's it. They're intimately connected with Twitter. And it's the same thing with Catch. Now, what Catch will do is it will monitor your Periscope stream. So every time you go live, as soon as you're done and you end the broadcast, Catch will catch the video and save it for you, because on Periscope, your video will expire after 24 hours. They keep the replay for 24 hours, but after that, it disappears. So with Catch, and that's spelled with a K, by the way, katch.me, you'll be able to preserve the video, and then you can do stuff with it. You can download it and then and edit it if you want to, and make a YouTube video out of it. Or you can just simply share it right from your catch.me page. The other thing is there is a setting in Catch that allows you to automatically have that shared to your Facebook page. So again, this is that word that I love so much. Automatically is something that gets me going. And if as soon as I go live on Periscope with my phone, as soon as I'm done, I hit end broadcast, I put that phone back in my pocket, it is already shared to Facebook. So all of my Facebook followers can then go ahead and enjoy the video if they did not get a chance to make it live. Okay. So that is the way in which I use Periscope right now, the way in which we use it. And we use it in conjunction with Catch to provide a little extra automation, which I love, and a little extra functionality in terms of saving those videos so you can revisit them later and share them again a few months later when that live stream is long since forgotten. You can go ahead and share it again if there was some good stuff in there, post it on Twitter, post it on Facebook, because you've preserved it. Okay, so that is a little bit about live streaming and why it gets me so excited, a little bit about how you can consider using these technologies to help you in your endeavor of growing a loyal fan base, because as mentioned, it's figuring out the best way to increase the authenticity, the closeness of the connection, the vulnerability even, again, to the limits of your own comfort level. That's going to differ for a lot of people. But, whatever your comfort level is, hit it as close to it as you can get as often as possible. And then, of course, this whole concept of automation and the 80-20 principle, being able to get a great deal out of a very small bit of effort is something that fascinates me to no end, and hopefully will fascinate you as well. So I'm going to wrap up the conversation there. If you are watching this live, the seat is open. Feel free to jump in, because I will stay online for a little bit if someone wants to jump in and have a conversation with me. For those listening on the podcast or later in the future, I will catch you on the next episode of TechMuze.